Hello everyone! First of all, thank you for watching. And second, before I really get started, I want to say that this video is actually intended for my dad. However, pretty much any beginner of any age, male or female, can follow the workout program I'm going to lay out here. And you can either use it to actually grow some muscle for a significant period of time, and also to prevent things that happen with age related to muscle loss and some of the metabolic changes that you may be having. This exercise program is also for anybody, not just beginners, but maybe even slightly more advanced individuals that just don't have a lot of time in their day to do a workout, to get to a gym. But it's also for people that don't have a lot of equipment, because this is not intended to take you to a gym. It's something you can do at home in just a few minutes of time. And for that reason, a lot of these exercises are going to be based on body weight with the addition of a couple dumbbells at most. Now, as you get more and more advanced, if you want to continue making visible progress, we may need to get some extra weights here and there, but this is a great place to start. I would recommend for males, I would suggest getting some dumbbells either in the 15-pound range or the 20-pound range. And for females, I would suggest a pair of dumbbells somewhere between 8 pounds and maybe up to 15. So within that range, that will get you started and going for a pretty long time. Again, as you get more advanced, you can make the decision, do I get more weights or not? But this is to get you started, something cheap, something affordable, something you can do at home. And with that, let's get started. We need to go over a few basics. First of all, what is this program intended to do? And that is to grow some muscle. Now, you will also gain some strength with this because muscle creates force, it creates strength, but strength is not the main goal here. And the reason for that is because muscle growth on its own through resistance training is what really drives the most significant markers of improved health. So if you were to go get a blood test after consistently engaging in a resistance training program with weights, you will find that almost all of your measurable health markers will have improved. So that's your cholesterol levels, your blood sugar levels, your lean muscle mass as opposed to fat tissue. All of that will improve with resistance training program. Even your bone density, which can be a concern for older individuals. This can also prevent osteoporosis and just generally improve quality of life, whether you're young or old. Because the more ability you have, the less you're reliant on others, the more you can do, your better health. It's just great all around. So that's the purpose of this program. Now, having established the purpose of this program, we need to talk about the proper rep range to achieve it. Because there's actually a few differences here, where reps taken in the 1 to 5 rep range are typically considered to be for strength only and do not produce much muscle growth, except for in very early beginners. The same is true of reps above 30, where you don't necessarily get a lot of muscle growth out of that, and it can really just become a boring and tiring experience because who wants to count to 30, 35, 100 doing the same activity over and over? So we're going to try to keep our rep range between 5 and 30, and that rep range has been shown to cause the most muscle growth. It's also a rep range that we can deal with a little bit of boredom at the higher end and try to not go so low that it tears up our joints and stuff like that, because that can be a concern as well. That means that any set of an exercise that we do will be in the 5 to 30 rep goal range. That brings us to talking about proximity to failure, because we're not just simply counting to 5 and stopping, or counting to 30 on any given exercise and stopping, but we want to approach what is known as failure. And that is when you can no longer complete that contraction of the muscle in that given exercise. And it's really that end of the range that causes the muscle growth to happen. It's also where we get the most metabolic changes. For example, if I were to take a set of bicep curls to number 5, and on number 6, I can't physically lift the weights anymore, my muscle refuses, that would be known as failure. Now, it's not necessary to train all the way to failure every time. However, we do want to train within close proximity to that, and that means within 3 to 0 reps of that occurring. If you've never trained to failure before, you may not know quite what that feels like. So I do suggest that you train to failure on a few of your exercises a few times here and there so that you know the sensation, and then you can gauge approximately how far away you are from that when you stop a set. Because we don't want to generate tons of fatigue approaching failure every time when we could get very similar results coming close to failure and not having the same amount of fatigue. So instead of going to that 6th rep that I can barely get and my arms are shaking, I may go ahead and stop it on number 5. 5 is very difficult. I know that I may have had one left in me, and I stop it there. So that's how we want to establish our rep ranges and how we establish the weight we use. Now, I've also mentioned a set at this point, and a set is any exercise performed through a certain range of repetitions and stopped. So that is our definition of a set, and for the most part, these workouts are going to be for 2 sets each exercise, meaning you perform the exercise, approach failure, stop, rest, and do it one more time. So that would be 2 sets. That brings us to rest times. How long should I rest between sets? The answer to that is almost never to do with an actual amount of time, but rather, has your heart rate come down a little bit if it was up? Is your breathing more or less back to normal if it was up? And if the answer to both of those is yes, you're probably ready for another set. And that typically happens between 1 minute of time and 4 minutes of time, depending on the difficulty of the exercise. For example, doing 1 set of squats can cause you to lose your breath a lot more than 1 set of curls. Therefore, you would probably take a little bit longer rest time on a set of squats and a little bit less rest time on a set of curls. So in that 1 minute to 4 minute range. We're also going to do one other thing in this workout plan known as supersetting. And we're going to do that to save time. It also can provide you with a small cardio benefit, especially if you're not used to lifting weights, and especially if you don't have much cardio in other areas of your life. So what a superset is combining 2 exercises without resting between sets of each. So for example, if I were to perform a set of curls and then superset it with tricep extensions, I would perform my curls close to failure, stop, and immediately go to doing my overhead tricep extensions, close to failure, stop, and that would constitute 1 superset. Therefore, 2 sets of supersets would be those 2 exercises performed once, and then those 2 exercises performed again. All right, let's get to workout number 1. But before we do, I want to quickly revisit the idea of sets. Previously, I said that most of these were designed to be 2 sets per exercise. However, I would recommend that people who are doing this for the very first time start their first week at 1 set per exercise. You may feel like you have more in you, but wait for the next day or the day after and let the soreness start to kick in before you really decide you're going to up your sets. Now, after a week or 2 at 1 set per exercise, you can then safely go up to 2 sets per exercise. And I recommend that you stay there for a few more weeks at least. Now, you can continue to stay at that place. However, as you become more advanced, there's absolutely nothing wrong with adding a 3rd set and a 4th set and even a 5th set to some of these workouts. But that's going to be up to you how much time you have in your day to add a few sets here and there. You'll still make great gains with just the 2 sets per exercise, but I want to let you know you can go higher than that if you want more out of it. So let's go ahead and show workout number 1, which begins with squats. Now, squatting can be a very different looking exercise depending on who is doing it. And that is because everybody's body is a little different. Some people have longer femurs than others, some people have shorter, some people are average, and even that alone can affect your squat. So my wife, for example, has pretty long femurs compared to down here, and when she squats, she tends to lean forward quite a lot. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but we are working with her to be able to get her to squat more vertically and less horizontally as far as the torso. So keep it in mind and don't think you're doing anything wrong, but we do have a goal to hit our quads, and the quads are best hit through the most vertical torso that you can manage throughout the squat. Now I'll give you a few tips on how to do that, and we'll begin by foot stance. So you want your feet to be roughly shoulder width apart. You can point your toes out slightly at around a 30 or 45 degree angle, depending on what is comfortable to you. And as you begin to go down, the idea is to push your knees out over your toes. Don't worry, that's not going to hurt you. You're just going to strengthen the ability to do that. It's not a vulnerable or bad position, despite what you may have heard. So you can begin by pushing your knees out and going as low as you can without causing yourself any pain. Now that's going to be different for different people. So if you are just doing your very first squat in many years, you might go as low as this, and that's about as far as you can go before you need to go back up again, and that's totally okay. You'll try to work on going a little bit lower from session to session to session, and ultimately you will get lower. But if that's where you start, it's all right. So we're going to go down to the depth that we can, aiming to go down to a full depth squat where the butt is basically rested on the calves. From that position, we push up powerfully and back down. As we do this, we want to breathe. Breathe in on your way down. Exhale on your way up. You can do this at a faster tempo, but we don't want to be at a crazy speed or where we're dropping into our squat. So we can be faster. Like so. But the idea is to control your descent. Now, if you have trouble where you are bending forward at the waist a lot rather than going down at the knees, you can try putting a little piece of wood or some thin books or something underneath your heels. That can help increase your range of motion, one, and it can also help keep you more upright. So you just want to elevate your heels a little bit. Again, point your feet slightly outward, knees over toes, down as far as you can go, and back up. So that's exercise number one. You're going to perform that for starting at one set, 5 to 30 reps, however you can manage without going to complete failure, but coming close to it. Now, if that becomes really easy, this is where your dumbbells come in. I like to put them here, over my neck, balanced on my shoulders, holding them against my head with my thumbs between the dumbbell and the back of my head. Going down and back up. Now, that may be too much weight for you, in which case you can just use the one dumbbell. And if you're also having trouble with your balance, it's okay to put your hands basically anywhere that works for you. Some people like to have their hands straight out, and that's perfectly okay. You can put them over your head, you can put them in front of you, clasping your chest, whatever. The hand placement doesn't matter too much. Now, on to exercise number 2, which is actually a superset of 2 exercises. Picking up your dumbbells, chest high, shoulders back, and palms facing outward. Going to curl upward and back down. Again, with the breathing, in and out, in and out. Now, we want to limit our body English, so as little swinging and rocking at the hips as possible, and trying to keep this portion of your arm as still as possible. It will lift up somewhat at the top of the lift, and that's okay, but for the most part, we want to avoid our arms doing this. So, stable arm moving only from the elbow down. You can increase the difficulty of these as well before you have to buy more dumbbells. by actually putting your arms out in front of you and starting from that position. Bracing your elbows against your rib cage. That will greatly increase the stretch on the muscle, which also increases the difficulty and can aid in muscle growth. Now, upon completing your first set of curls, approaching failure but not reaching it, you're going to go immediately from this into an overhead press without any rest. Palms facing out, shoulders back, and arms not so much in or out, but rather in line with your elbows. Pressing straight up, breathing in on the way down, like so. Perform that exercise until you're close to reaching failure. Stop, take a rest, and then you can perform the superset again. Now I will show you also, try to again limit your swinging and rocking. Try to keep your body stable. And if necessary, you can do this seated. It's totally up to you. After you've completed curls into overhead press, you'll rest like you normally would after another exercise. Then you'll complete your next set. So 1 set for beginners per exercise, 2 sets after you've transitioned into this a little bit, and from there, add on. Now we'll go on to workout number 2. All right, workout number 2. This exercise can be a little difficult to get at first, but with some time and practice and these cues that I will give you, you're going to have it down pretty fast. Now the first one we're doing is called Romanian deadlift or straight leg deadlift. So you're going to begin with your dumbbells. You're going to hold them at your side at a diagonal so that they're not necessarily in front, not necessarily to your side, but in between. And pushing your waist backward, you're going to lower down, keeping your arms close to your body, your back neutral or slightly arched, as low as you can go, getting a somewhat uncomfortable stretch in the hamstrings. Once you've reached that place of depth that you feel you can't go lower, stand back up by pushing the hips forward. Please note that this is not bending forward at the waist and lifting with the back, but rather an action of the hips, and I'll demonstrate the difference. We're not doing this and lifting with the back, but we're literally pushing our butt and hips backward and up as we go down and back up by pushing forward. So this is all in the hips. Breathing in on the way down and exhaling on the way up. Now, you should be feeling a pretty good stretch here and maybe even some stretch here, and those are the muscles that we are intending to work. This is not supposed to be a back exercise, so don't make it into one unnecessarily. If you do have some issue where you are rounding at the spine, you're not at great risk of injury because the weight we're starting with is pretty low, and injury risk doesn't really happen until you get into extreme weights. Don't worry about that too much, but do try to keep the spine from rounding over because you will get a greater stretch on the hamstrings and therefore greater muscle growth. Just keep your spine neutral or slightly arched and you'll be fine. You're going to perform that again in the 5 to 30 rep range. And here we have the wood again coming in. If you feel that you're about to tip forward, putting some wood underneath the toes this time as opposed to the heels can help keep you balanced, and it can help you perform the proper action so that you're not bending forward at the waist, but rather pushing the waist back. Upon completing your Romanian deadlifts, you're going to take your rest, perform the set again, take another rest, and then we'll go on to the next exercise. So we're going to begin a superset with upright rows, holding the dumbbells in front of you and pulling them up, elbows high, to that point. Exhaling on the way up, inhaling on the way down. Remember, we are not supposed to drop the weights, but but we were lowering them under control and pulling them back up forcefully, minding you don't hit yourself in the chin. So up and out and down under control. Upon completing that first set, you're going to go immediately to overhead tricep extension. So you'll raise the dumbbells up over your head, allowing them to go as low as you can with a stretch on your tricep. Standing pretty still and stable, push up, down, up, down under control, up, down under control. Performing that set again close to failure, but not necessarily reaching it. You do want to keep your body from rocking in and out, just like with the curls. So try to limit as much of this as possible. We're not throwing our hands upward, but rather going as deep as the stretch will allow us and back up. Now those two exercises, the first one, upright row, will target your shoulders and your trap area. And then the overhead tricep extension will target the back part of your arm. So the bicep curls we did in the last exercise are obviously here. The triceps are here. So we're targeting already most of our upper body and lower body. We only have a few muscles left. So we're gonna go on to workout number 3. And the first exercise of workout number 3 is again, squats. Now, if you're tired of doing squats and you have developed a good amount of strength, you can sub this out for a different exercise, which I'll show you now, called standing one leg lunges. And we're going to begin possibly with something soft under the back leg, your front leg out in front of you, lowering down like so. You will then switch legs. Performing for the same number of reps. Now that may be too difficult for some of you in the beginning, and that's okay. That's why we'll go back to doing the squats. The choice of which exercise you do is up to you. Many of the same target muscles are worked. That would be the quads and the glutes. And this just adds a level of difficulty in case squats are becoming too easy even with the weight. And on that note, you can add weight to your lunges as well, like so. Just holding them in your hands, down and up. Now when you perform that exercise, you're pushing off of the front leg and using the back leg as a stabilizer. That doesn't mean that it just lays there limp though. So you can use the back leg as much as necessary, but the idea is to push off the front leg, pushing up and off. Now, after you've completed either your squats or your single leg lunges, we're gonna move into the next exercise, which is again going to be a superset, starting with push-ups. Now, if you can't do a push-up, don't worry, I will show you some variations that will make it a little easier. And if you're already doing push-ups and you need to make it harder, I can show you a variation for that as well. But we'll start with the basic push-up. So you're going to assume hands out in line with your elbows, roughly about 1.5 times your shoulder width, letting your elbows flare out as you go down. Your legs will be behind you and you will assume a plank position. Go down, breathing in, and push up, breathing out. Now, the first thing you can do to increase the difficulty is actually pause a little bit at the bottom without letting your weight onto the floor. So you do want to keep your weight supported throughout, not easing off, but the longer you wait there, the more difficult this exercise becomes. And you can continue making progress even if you're doing the same number of repetitions just by pausing there. Now, let's immediately move into showing some of the easier variations in case you're not there yet. You will still assume the same hand position, but instead of planking, you'll allow your legs to come down to the ground as much as you need. So if you can handle it with your hips on the ground, try it with just your knees. And then you can move on to these. Those are all still too easy. You can also use something to elevate your hands, such as your dumbbells or some thick books, something that's not going to slide around too easy, but something that will elevate your hands just enough to let you go down deeper. And that's because the deeper you go into any exercise, the more the stretch increases and the higher the difficulty is. Now, that's the same thing for squats. Going a full depth squat will develop your strength and your leg muscles more than going to a half squat. But as I already said, you do what you're able to do and you work into going deeper as you go. That might clue you in that resistance training is also great for mobility. A lot of times you hear that people who work out a lot are muscle bound, and really that's just not the case. People who work out a lot kind of happen to be some of the most flexible people that you will meet if they are working out correctly. And this is one of those things that can do to increase your mobility more and more and more. Upon completing your push-ups, you're going to go immediately into a bent over row. Now you're going to begin in a similar position to the Romanian deadlift, pushing your butt back, but this time allowing a little bit more flexion in your knees. So you want to go over until you are approximately parallel to the floor or as low as you can comfortably go, holding the dumbbells to your sides and pulling your arms and elbows straight back. Now, breathing in on the way down, exhaling on the way up. Now, your elbow placement here can make a difference on to which muscles you are working. This is a great exercise for your back regardless of how you do it, but depending on how you do it, you might hit different portions of your back. So pulling your elbows in to your sides will tend to target the latissimus muscle, which is lying here and all the way down here, a little bit more, whereas pulling up with your elbows out tends to hit your upper middle back more in places that I can't quite reach. But depending on how you do your arms, that way or this way, you can hit slightly different muscles. It's really up to you, and you can use some variety where you do it some ways sometimes and the other way other times. And that concludes workout number 3. On to workout number 4. Now you already know all of the exercises in workout number 4 because you've already performed them, but I'll go over them briefly again. We're starting with Romanian deadlift. Again, with the dumbbells to your sides, pushing your butt back, and something that I failed to mention the first time, trying to keep the leg as straight as possible. You may have a slight bend in the knee, and that's okay, but you do want to keep them back without really locking out. So full knee lockout is not necessary, but pushing your knees back with your leg, aka straight leg deadlift, as these are also known, is a great cue. Pushing back, back up, pushing back, and back up. After you've performed that exercise, taking your rest, and however many sets you intend to do, we're going to go straight into bicep curls, performing a set, and without rest, supersetting with overhead tricep extensions. And that really concludes the workout. So let's talk briefly about the overview of what we've done. Squats target the quads and the glutes. The Romanian deadlift targets the hamstrings and also the glutes. The overhead press targets the shoulder musculature, the triceps, and possibly a little bit of the upper chest. The curls target the biceps. Overhead tricep extension targets the tricep again in a different way than pushing exercises do. The push-up targets mainly the chest area, a little bit of the core because you're engaging in a plank throughout the exercise, and it also does some additional tricep work. Don't worry, your triceps can handle it. The bent over row is primarily an upper back and mid back exercise with some bicep involvement. And you're also supporting yourself, of course, using your leg musculature throughout that exercise as well. So with all of those exercises combined, we're hitting almost every major muscle in the body twice per week, once in some of these instances. And if you add some extra volume by adding some sets, then you're going to be hitting them plenty. So you can do your push-ups maybe with more sets than you do your other exercises because you only hit them once a week, and the same for your bent over rows. You can add some more sets than you may for other things because you only hit them once a week. Go slower on adding sets for the squats and the Romanian deadlifts because we're performing those both twice a week. So you don't want to do too much volume too quick. Ease into it. And that really concludes the entire workout plan. Your rest days should be taken however you want them. I recommend doing workout number 1 followed by workout number 2 the next day, having one rest day, followed by workout number 3, workout number 4, and then 2 rest days, making your full week. But you can split that up however fits your schedule the best. If you want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then have 3 rest days in a row, by all means do that. But again, I designed this workout for my dad. I think this will work out best for him. It'll probably work out very well for you. And thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. I wish you the best, and stay healthy.